The observation deck fell silent as Captain Verin pressed his six-fingered hand against the viewing screen. His scales rippled with disbelief, a biological response his species couldn't suppress when confronted with the impossible. "Run the diagnostic again," he said quietly. The medical officer, a Thaxian named Quillnex, didn't move. Her compound eyes remained fixed on the readouts, her mandibles clicking in what could only be described as shock. "Captain, I have run it 17 times. The results are identical. That's not possible." And yet, down in the combat arena, separated from them by reinforced polymesh barriers designed to withstand plasma fire, stood Lieutenant Kira Vance, human, female, approximately 1.7 meters tall, weighing perhaps 60 kilograms after her recent injuries. She shouldn't have been standing at all. 3 cycles ago, she had walked into the arena for what was supposed to be a routine endurance assessment, standard protocol for all new recruits to the Galactic Defense Initiative. Every species had to prove they could handle the physical demands of combat before being assigned to active duty. Humans were new to the coalition, brutally new. Their planet had only achieved faster-than-light travel 6 solar rotations prior, and the GDI remained skeptical about their application. Sure, humans had passed the intelligence screenings, the tactical simulations, the psychological evaluations, but intelligence meant nothing if your body collapsed under pressure. The endurance trial was simple in concept. Participants entered the arena and faced increasingly difficult physical challenges, while their pain threshold was monitored through neural sensors. The test continued until the subject reached their breaking point and verbally submitted, or until their body began shutting down from stress. Automatic safeties would trigger medical intervention before permanent damage occurred. Most species tapped out within 40 minutes. Kira Vance had been in that arena for 9 hours. Verin watched as she completed another obstacle sequence. Her left arm hung at an awkward angle, dislocated at the shoulder approximately 2 hours ago when she'd fallen during a climbing section. She'd simply grabbed it with her right hand, slammed it against a wall, and popped it back into socket. No scream, no tears, just a sharp exhale, and then she kept moving. Her right leg had sustained a fracture. The medical sensors confirmed it. A hairline crack in her tibia from a jump that had been calculated to be just beyond human capability. She'd landed badly, stumbled, and Verin had been certain she would submit. Instead, she'd wrapped it with strips torn from her uniform and fashioned a crude splint. Then she kept going. "This violates every physiological model we have," Quillnex said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The neural feedback alone should have rendered her unconscious. Look at her pain indicators." Verin looked. The holographic display showed Kira's nervous system in real time, with bright red markers indicating active pain signals. Her body was screaming. Burns on her hands from the thermal section, lacerations across her back from the blade maze, potential internal bleeding from the impact trials. The readouts suggested she should be in shock, possibly dying. She was doing pull-ups. "Her adrenaline levels are off the charts," another technician reported, "but that should have depleted hours ago. I don't understand what's sustaining her." "Stubbornness," someone muttered. Verin's translator struggled with the human word, but he understood the concept. Humans had a reputation, even in their brief time among the stars. Stubborn, reckless, prone to continuing long past the point of reason. He dismissed it as exaggeration. Propaganda, perhaps, from a species trying to seem more formidable than they were. He was reassessing that position. "Should we stop the test?" Quillnex asked. "The safeties haven't triggered. The safeties are designed for species with normal pain responses. Captain, her brain is processing agony that would kill most coalition members through shock alone, and she's not even slowing down." On screen, Kira finished her pull-ups and dropped to the ground. She landed heavily on her injured leg, and for a moment her face twisted into a grimace. Then it smoothed out into something that might have been a smile. A smile. "What is she doing?" Verin asked. The camera zoomed closer. Kira had pulled out a small packet from her boot. Food rations. She was eating. Medical. What are her energy levels? Depleted. She should be running on fumes. Apparently humans can just decide to keep going anyway. Verin had studied 17 different species' physiological responses to stress. This was unprecedented. Pain was supposed to be a warning system. a biological imperative that forced organisms to stop before they destroyed themselves. It was a fundamental rule of evolution. Humans seemed to have missed that memo. The arena shifted to its next configuration. Gravity increased by 30%, a test designed to stress the cardiovascular system. Most participants found this section particularly challenging because it didn't just hurt, it exhausted. Your own body became the weight you couldn't escape. Kira stood slowly, adjusting to the new pressure. Her injured leg trembled. For a moment, Varen thought she might finally submit. Then she started running. By the 7 moons, Quillnex breathed. The next obstacle appeared. A vertical climb, 30 meters, no safety harness. Protocol dictated that if a participant fell from this height under increased gravity, the medical team would have perhaps 4 seconds to activate the emergency field before impact. Kira began climbing. Her dislocated shoulder must have been agony. Every reach, every pull, sending signals to her brain that she was damaging herself. The neural readouts confirmed it. Her pain was a solid wall of red across every display. She climbed anyway. Halfway up, her injured leg gave out. She swung free, held only by her arms, dangling in increased gravity that was trying to slam her into the ground. The entire observation deck held its breath. Kira pulled herself up using only her arms, found a new foothold, and continued. "This is insane," a Kralik officer said. "She's going to kill herself." "Should we intervene?" another asked. Varen watched the human climb. Her face was a mask of concentration. Blood dripped from her hands where the rough climbing surface had torn through already damaged skin. Her breathing was labored but controlled. "She hasn't submitted," he said finally. "Until she verbally concedes or the automated systems trigger, we continue." "But Captain, those are the rules." They were rules he was beginning to regret. Kira reached the top of the climb. She hauled herself over the edge and collapsed onto the platform. The medical sensors showed her heart rate at dangerous levels. Her body temperature had spiked. Every muscle was inflamed. She lay there for exactly 30 seconds, then she stood up. "What is the current record for this test?" Varen asked quietly. A technician checked the database. 7 hours and 12 minutes, held by a Kronar heavy welder. They're known for exceptional physical durability and pain tolerance. What was their condition at the end? Multiple lacerations, severe exhaustion, minor fractures. They spent 3 days in medical recovery. Varen looked at Kira's medical readouts again. Her injuries were more severe than that, and she'd been going for 9 hours and 17 minutes. And she was still moving. The arena generated its final challenge. A combat simulation, 3 training drones, programmed to fight at gradually increasing difficulty until the participant was overwhelmed. They were equipped with non-lethal weapons, but the pain they inflicted was very real. Most participants lasted less than 5 minutes in this section before the accumulated injuries and exhaustion made defense impossible. Kira dropped into a fighting stance. Her injured leg was her base. Her dislocated shoulder would make her left arm nearly useless. She was covered in burns, cuts, and bruises. She'd been awake and under extreme physical stress for nearly 10 hours. The first drone attacked. She moved with surprising speed, favoring her good leg and using her right arm to deflect the drone's strike. It tagged her ribs with a shock weapon. Her body convulsed from the electrical discharge. She grabbed the drone and slammed it into the ground hard enough to crack its casing. The second and third drones attacked simultaneously. This was the point where tactical thinking usually deteriorated, where exhaustion and pain overwhelmed strategy. Participants either froze or made desperate, ineffective moves. Kira did neither. She used the broken first drone as a shield, blocking one attack while ducking under the other. Her movements weren't pretty. They weren't the fluid grace of a fresh fighter. But they were effective, each motion calculated to conserve energy and minimize exposure. One drone caught her across the back with a plasma whip set to training intensity. The smell of burned flesh reached the observation deck through the environmental systems. Kira didn't scream. She spun, grabbed the whip, and yanked the drone off balance. Then she kicked it, using her injured leg in a move that must have been excruciating, sending it crashing into the third drone. Both drones recalibrated and came at her again. Her pain levels just exceeded the scale, Quillnex said, her voice hollow. "Captain, the sensors are maxed out. I cannot accurately measure what she's experiencing anymore. Is she in danger of permanent damage?" "She has been in danger of permanent damage for the last 6 hours. I have no idea why she's still..." conscious. On screen, Kira fought. She was slower now, visibly struggling. One drone scored a hit on her already injured shoulder. She dropped to one knee. The entire observation deck waited for her to submit. She didn't. Instead, she swept the drone's legs with her good arm and smashed it against the ground. The second drone attacked from behind. She rolled, clumsily, her injured body protesting every motion, and came up with the broken drone in her hands. She threw it. Her aim was perfect. Both remaining drones went down. Silence filled the observation deck. The arena's automated voice announced the completion of the combat section. Time to voluntary submission or system intervention was recorded at 11 hours and 43 minutes. A new record. By more than 4 hours, Kira Vance stood in the center of the arena, swaying slightly. Blood dripped from multiple wounds. Her uniform was torn and burned. Her left arm hung uselessly at her side again, the shoulder having dislocated a second time during the fight. She looked up at the observation deck. Verin couldn't see her expression clearly through the distance and viewing screens, but he could see her mouth move. "Is there more?" she asked. Her voice came through the speakers, rough and tired, but steady. Quillnex made a sound that her species used to indicate complete bewilderment. "She's asking if there's more. Captain, she's asking for more." Verin realized his hand was shaking. He'd been in military service for 27 solar cycles. He'd seen soldiers from dozens of species perform acts of incredible courage and endurance. He'd watched warriors push themselves to what he believed were the absolute limits of biological possibility. He'd never seen anything like this. "End the test," he said quietly. "Medical teams to the arena, immediately. Should we inform the human that she passed?" Verin watched as Kira's legs finally gave out. She dropped to her knees, then slumped forward onto her hands. Even now, she was trying to get back up. "I don't think she cares about passing," he said. The medical team reached her within seconds. She tried to wave them off, actually tried to refuse medical assistance. It took 3 medics to get her onto the stretcher, and she was arguing with them the entire time. Quillnex appeared beside Verin, her compound eyes reflecting the lights of the observation deck in strange, fractured patterns. "Permission to speak freely, Captain?" "Granted. We need to reconsider everything we think we know about human capabilities. If this is standard for their species, if they can all push through pain like this, ignore their body's warnings like this, continue functioning when they should be incapacitated." She trailed off. "Then what?" Verin asked. "Then they're either the most dangerous allies we've ever recruited, or the most dangerous enemies we could possibly face." Verin watched as the medical team worked on Kira. She was still conscious, still trying to sit up, still apparently ready to continue if asked. Her pain receptors had to be absolutely destroyed by now. Her body's warning systems had been screaming at her for hours. She'd ignored all of it. "Schedule a meeting with the human delegation," Verin said. "I need to understand if this is exceptional for their species, or if this is normal. And if it's normal?" He thought about that. Thought about a species that could simply decide to ignore pain, that could push their bodies far beyond the point where evolution said they should stop, that could look at their own biological limits and choose to exceed them anyway. "Then we need to make absolutely certain they remain our allies," he said, "because I do not want to fight a war against an enemy that refuses to know when they're beaten." Down in the medical bay, Kira Vance was arguing with the doctors about when she could return to active duty. It had been 11 hours and 52 minutes since she'd entered the arena. She was asking about tomorrow. The medical bay hummed with activity as 3 human physicians worked alongside the station's alien medical staff. Dr. Maya Torres stood with her arms crossed, watching the Thaxian nurses attempt to sedate Kira for the 4th time. "She metabolized the sedative again," Quillnex reported, her mandibles clicking in frustration. "At this rate, we will run out of approved pharmaceutical options." Maya sighed. "Yeah, that sounds about right. Human livers are absurdly efficient. Try the blue compound, dosage triple what you'd use for a Kralik." "Triple? That could be fatal." "It won't be. Trust me." Captain Verin entered the medical bay, his scales shifting to a diplomatic neutral tone. He'd spent the last hour reviewing footage of the endurance trial, frame by frame, looking for any sign of deception or technological enhancement. He'd found nothing except one exhausted human who refused to quit. "Dr. Torres," he said, nodding respectfully. "How is Lieutenant Vance?" "Ornery as hell, which means she's fine." Maya gestured to the diagnostic screen. Dislocated shoulder, reset twice. Hairline fracture in the tibia, already showing signs of calcification. Second-degree burns on both palms. 17 lacerations of varying depth. Mild concussion. Severe muscle inflammation throughout her entire body. And she wants to know if she passed. She established a new station record by over 4 hours. Cool, can you tell her that? Because she's convinced you're going to make her do it again. Veren's translator struggled with the human idiom, ornery as hell, but he understood the sentiment. He approached Kira's medical pod. She was finally unconscious, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been during the entire trial. Is this level of pain tolerance normal for humans? He asked quietly. Maya considered the question carefully. Define normal. Can all humans do what Kira did? Probably not to that extreme. She's military, specifically special operations background. But could most humans push through significant pain if they decided it was necessary? Yeah, we're kind of built that way. Built wrong, you mean? Quillnex interjected. Pain is a survival mechanism. Ignoring it is biologically irrational. And yet here we are, alive and thriving as a species. Maya pulled up a holographic display. Look, our evolutionary path was weird. We didn't have natural weapons like claws or venom. We weren't particularly fast or strong compared to our planet's predators. What we had was endurance and the ability to decide that pain was just information, not a command. That sounds horrifying, Quillnex said. It kept us alive. Our ancestors used to hunt by literally chasing prey until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans can sweat, can regulate temperature, can keep moving long after other species would stop. We call it persistence hunting. Some humans still do it. Varen processed this information. You hunted by refusing to stop? That was your evolutionary advantage? One of them. The other was being crazy enough to look at something that wanted to eat us and think, I wonder if I can eat it first. We're opportunistic omnivores with excellent pattern recognition and absolutely terrible self-preservation instincts. A tone sounded from the medical pod. Kira was waking up, her eyes opened slowly, focusing on the ceiling before tracking to the people around her. Did I pass? You shattered the previous record, Varen said. By a considerable margin. Good. She tried to sit up. The medical restraints held her down. Why am I tied to the bed? Because you kept trying to leave, Maya said dryly. You have a fractured leg, Kira. You need at least 48 hours of recovery before you're cleared for light duty. I can walk on it. I know you can. That's not the point. The point is you shouldn't. Your body needs time to heal. Kira scowled but stopped, struggling. Fine. 48 hours, but I want it documented that I could do more if needed. It's documented. The entire station watched you do 11 hours of what should have been impossible. Maya turned to Varen. Captain, you wanted to understand human capabilities. Here's the simple version. We're not the strongest species, not the fastest, not even the smartest, but we're really, really good at not giving up. Evolution gave us bodies that can take tremendous abuse and minds that can override our own safety protocols. That seems like a flaw. It's a feature. Painful, sometimes stupid, but definitely a feature. The door to the medical bay opened again. Commander Jarek entered, a massive Kronar who held the previous endurance record. His species stood nearly 3 meters tall, with dense muscle and bone structure designed for high-gravity worlds. He looked at Kira's medical pod, then at the diagnostic screens showing her injuries. I need to speak with this human, he rumbled. Maya stepped aside but stayed close. She's my patient, keep it brief. Jarek approached the pod slowly, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly gentle. I held that record for 6 solar cycles. I trained my entire life to achieve it. I pushed myself to what I believed were the absolute limits of physical possibility. Kira met his gaze steadily. You had a good run. You beat my time by 4 hours, with worse injuries. I watched the footage. You should not have been able to continue after the 3rd hour. Probably not. Then why did you? Kira was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried an honesty that made everyone in the medical bay listen carefully. Because stopping wasn't an option. Not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't. Humans don't tap out when we still have something left to give. We tap out when there's literally nothing remaining. And if there had been more challenges, then I would have kept going, until there weren't. Jarek stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pressed his fist to his chest in a Kronar gesture of profound respect. You are either the bravest warrior I have ever encountered, or the most insane. Possibly both. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. He turned to Verin. Captain, I formally request that Lieutenant Vance be assigned to Alpha Combat Squadron. If humans can perform like this as a baseline, we need that capability on the front lines. Baseline? Quillnex sputtered. Surely this is exceptional even for humans. Maya laughed. You want to know what's really funny? Kira's good, don't get me wrong. But she's not exceptional by human military standards. She's well trained and highly motivated, but we've got people who make her look soft. The aliens in the room exchanged glances. You're joking, Verin said. I'm really not. We've got underwater demolition teams that train in conditions that would kill most species. Mountain warfare specialists who operate at altitudes where oxygen is barely sufficient. Desert units that work in heat that would cook a Thaxian alive. And all of them volunteer for it. Why would anyone volunteer for that? Because humans are weird. We see something difficult and think, I bet I could do that. We see something dangerous and think, but what if I'm careful? We see something impossible and think impossible just means nobody's done it yet. Verin's scales rippled through several colors as he processed this. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't physically superior to most coalition species in any single metric, but their ability to simply decide to continue, to override their own biology's warnings, to push past pain that should incapacitate them, that was a force multiplier beyond anything he'd anticipated. How many humans have joined the GDI? He asked. Currently? About 2,000 across various positions. Another 50,000 have applied and are waiting for processing. And they're all like this. Maya shrugged. Define like this. Are they all willing to break their own bones and keep fighting? Probably not all of them. But most of them? Yeah, if the situation demanded it. Humans are really good at doing what needs to be done, even when it hurts. A communication alert sounded. One of the technicians looked up from their console, confusion evident. Captain, we're receiving reports from the training facilities. Several human recruits are requesting to attempt the endurance trial. How many? 47. And counting. Quillnex made that bewildered sound again. They watched Lieutenant Vance nearly destroy herself, and their response is to volunteer for the same experience? Welcome to humanity, Maya said cheerfully. We see someone do something extreme and think, challenge accepted. Kira stirred in her pod. Let them try. Competition makes us better. You need rest, Maya said firmly. I am resting. I'm lying down, aren't I? This is basically a vacation. Jarek laughed, a deep rumbling sound. I begin to understand why your species survived long enough to reach the stars. You're all absolutely insane. That's fair, Kira admitted. Verin watched the interaction, his tactical mind already recalculating force projections and combat readiness assessments. If humans could perform like this, if they could take damage that would sideline other species and simply refuse to stop, then every strategic model needed revision. Dr. Torres, I need a comprehensive report on human physiological capabilities, pain tolerance, healing rates, maximum sustainable exertion levels, psychological breaking points. You won't like what you find, Maya warned. Why not? Because humans don't really have breaking points in the traditional sense. We break, sure, but then we just keep going anyway. It's inefficient, sometimes counterproductive, and absolutely infuriating from a medical standpoint, but it's who we are. An alarm sounded from another medical pod. One of the human recruits who'd been injured during standard training exercises was trying to discharge himself early. The nurses were arguing with him. He was explaining very patiently that his broken ribs were not that bad and he could totally still run. Maya went to intervene, muttering something about stubborn idiots that Verin's translator couldn't quite process. Quillnex moved beside him, her compound eyes fixed on the various diagnostic screens showing human physiology. Captain, if this is standard for them, if they truly can all push like this, then we need to adjust our entire understanding of human military potential, Verin finished. That was not what I was going to say. I was going to say that we need to be very, very careful about how we deploy them. A soldier who doesn't know when to retreat, who will fight past the point of effectiveness, who refuses to acknowledge defeat. That soldier will either win impossible battles or die in them, perhaps both. It was a sobering thought. Kira's voice drifted from the medical pod. "Hey, Captain. Since I passed the trial, when's my first combat assignment? You're in recovery for at least 48 hours. Right, but after that?" Verin looked at this small, damaged human who had redefined his understanding of endurance. Her body was broken in multiple places. Her pain receptors had been screaming for hours. She'd pushed herself far beyond any reasonable limit, and she was ready for more. "We'll discuss it when you're healed." "So, Monday?" "It's currently Friday evening, Lieutenant. Monday is less than 72 hours away." "Exactly. Plenty of time." Maya returned, heard the conversation, and pressed a button that administered another sedative directly into Kira's pod. "Stop recruiting from your medical bed. Sleep. That's an order. You're not my commanding officer. I'm your doctor, which means I outrank everyone when it comes to your health. Sleep." Kira's eyes drifted closed, but not before she mumbled, "This isn't over. It never is with you people," Maya said, but there was fondness in her voice. Verin left the medical bay with more questions than answers. He'd called this meeting to understand if Kira's performance was exceptional or standard. What he'd learned was somehow more unsettling. It was both. Exceptional by coalition standards, but relatively normal for human military personnel. Commander Jarek fell into step beside him. "Your thoughts, Captain?" "I'm thinking that we've been evaluating humans all wrong. We've been measuring them against other species using standard metrics. Strength, speed, durability. But those metrics don't account for sheer stubborn refusal to quit. It's a dangerous trait. For them, or for their enemies. Both, I suspect." They reached the observation deck, where the endurance trial footage was still playing on a loop. Several alien officers stood watching, their expressions ranging from disbelief to concern, to something that might have been awe. One of them, a young Thaxian navigator named Plex, turned as they entered. "Captain, permission to speak?" "Granted. I've been reviewing Earth's military history, their wars, their battles, their conflicts. And there's a pattern. Humans lose battles, sometimes badly, but they almost never lose wars, because they don't stop. Ever. They'll retreat, regroup, adapt, and come back, over and over until they win or until there's nothing left to fight with." "Your point?" "My point is that Lieutenant Vance didn't do anything unusual for her species. She just demonstrated what humans have been doing for thousands of years. They endure. It's not a tactic or a strategy. It's their fundamental nature." Verin looked at the screen where Kira was climbing with a dislocated shoulder and fractured leg. "And we've invited 2,000 of them into our military. With 50,000 more waiting," Jarek added. "Captain, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering if we've made a mistake, if humans are too unpredictable, too dangerous to integrate. Have we? No. We've made the smartest decision possible, because the alternative is that humans join someone else's military. Or worse, they decide they don't need a coalition at all." Jarek gestured to the screen. "That determination, that refusal to quit, that's either fighting beside us or against us. I know which option I prefer." Verin watched the footage cycle back to the beginning. Kira entering the arena, fresh and whole, unaware of what the next 11 hours would demand of her, and knowing humans, knowing what he'd learned today, he had no doubt she'd do it again if asked. They all would. "Prepare quarters for the incoming human recruits," he said finally. "And schedule advanced combat integration training. If we're going to work with humans, we need to understand their capabilities fully." "And their limitations?" Plex asked. Verin thought about Kira asking if there were more challenges, about humans chasing prey until it collapsed, about a species that looked at pain and decided it was optional. "I'm not sure they have limitations in any conventional sense," he said, "but we're going to find out." 3 days later, Kira Vance reported for duty with Alpha Combat Squadron. Her leg was healed enough to walk without a limp. Her shoulder had been regenerated using advanced medical technology. The burns and lacerations were fading to scars. She was ready. Behind her, 47 other humans had completed their own endurance trials. None had beaten her record, but 12 had exceeded Jarek's previous one. The Coalition's understanding of physiological limits was being rewritten in real time. Captain Verin watched them assemble from his office, these strange, stubborn, impossible humans. They'd changed everything without even trying, simply by being exactly what they were, survivors who refused to know when they were beaten. His communication console chimed. It was High Command, requesting a full evaluation of human combat potential. He began typing his report with a single observation that would reshape Coalition military doctrine. Humans do not fight until they cannot continue. They fight until the enemy cannot continue. This makes them either our greatest asset or our greatest threat. I recommend we ensure they remain the former. Below, in the training yard, Kira was already arguing with the combat instructor about increasing the difficulty of the morning exercises. Some things, Verin realized, were simply inevitable, like gravity, like entropy, like humans finding new ways to exceed expectations while complaining the standards were too easy. He saved his report and allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for, but it was going to find out.